Good evening, everybody. Elections have consequences, as former President Barack Obama once reminded us. And his vice president is now leading this nation. And in less than a week in office, President Biden is only further dividing the nation, even as he calls for unity, endorsing the radical Dems' continued persecution of his predecessor, Donald Trump, who is now a private citizen after all. And President Biden approving the sham impeachment process launched by Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer with the complicity of Republican Senators McConnell, Romney, and Marshall, and other rhinos. And today, all of the senators of both parties were sworn in as jurors for the impeachment trial of that private citizen, that former president, President Donald Trump, who is obviously, even to the vile and vicious radical Dems, obviously no longer in office. The radical Dems don't care, and seemingly the rhinos don't either. They both want to further persecute the man they've sought to destroy since he won the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. No matter the cost to the nation, the division they exacerbate and enlarge. The Democrats and the deep state and the left-wing national media, along with their masters on Wall Street, K Street, and Silicon Valley, have not been held to account for a single venal act. And there have been hundreds of such acts committed as they spawned phony FBI investigations, created false dossier, put together a special counsel, and now 2 impeachments, defrauding and duping willing courts and agencies, and all with the averted eyes of a corrupt federal judiciary. Radical Democrats so emboldened that they now, in front of all America, knowingly violate the U.S. Constitution as they slither across the floor of the U.S. Senate, intent on destroying one man and devastating 74 million Americans who supported his agenda and voted for Donald Trump. The Constitution they violate, without conscience, is clear and unequivocal on the point. Quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment." Removed from office. And also straightforward and plain, when the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. The President, the Chief Justice. The President isn't in office and the Chief Justice isn't presiding. What a sham. Senator Rand Paul took to the Senate, making the point this is nothing more than the radical Dems' endless effort to overthrow Trump and his agenda.
This impeachment is nothing more than a partisan exercise designed to further divide the country. Democrats claim to want to unify the country, but impeaching a former president, a private citizen, is the antithesis of unity. Unity is the opposite of this travesty we are about to witness. If we are about to try to impeach a president, where is the Chief Justice? If the accused is no longer president, where is the constitutional power to impeach him? Private citizens don't get impeached. Impeachment is for removal from office, and the accused here has already left office. Hyper-partisan Democrats are about to drag our great country down into the gutter of rancor and vitriol, the likes of which has never been seen in our nation's history. Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. It's almost as if they have no ability to exist except in opposition to Donald Trump. Without him as their boogeyman, they might have to legislate and to actually convince Americans that their policy prescriptions are the right ones.
No such need to this point. Senator Schumer and McConnell will shred this Constitution for their vindictiveness and for their own petty purposes. And now claim radical Dem Senator Patrick Leahy will be allowed to preside over their trial, which is also in clear violation of the Constitution and mere decency. They also see, of course, no real need for witnesses.
I don't think there's a need for a whole lot of witnesses. We were all the witnesses. You know, it's different than the previous trial. And we will not let the Republicans be dilatory just to delay it for its own sake so we don't do COVID or don't do anything, but it'll be fair.
It'll be fair. And the Republicans have no response to this. There is no action they take that seems intended to thwart this outrage. We'll be talking tonight about the left's efforts to attack former President Trump with Just the News editor John Solomon with new revelations on Obamagate. We're joined as well by former CIA veteran Fred Fleitz on former CIA Director John Brennan's call for the intelligence agencies to go after the Dems' political opponents. And by the way, that's exactly what they're doing. And former Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, who is launching 2 new think tanks defending Trump's America First agenda. We'll also be joined by The Hill's Joe Concha on the left, targeting former Trump aides. Well, our lead story, Trump supporters aren't the only ones who are realizing quickly that elections have consequences. Democratic supporters in Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and elsewhere are having early onset buyer's remorse. President Biden is planning to extend his ban on new leases on fracking from the original 2 months now to an entire year. Do you remember when Biden and Harris kept telling their voters that they wouldn't ban fracking?
I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel. No new fracking. I am not banning fracking, period. I make it clear, I do not propose banning fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact.
Do you feel better now? For more now on how President Biden is killing thousands, tens of thousands of jobs, we turn to Fox News correspondent Mark Meredith. Mark.
Lou, good evening. The Biden Interior Department has placed a 2-month pause on issuing new oil and gas permits on federal lands. And as you mentioned, there are strong indications, that more restrictions are coming potentially this week. The decision has rattled petroleum producers, especially in New Mexico, where oil and gas drilling, as you know, is a huge industry. The new administration says addressing climate change a major priority for theirs for the 100 days. But oil and gas producers fear that this temporary pause may last a lot longer, as you mentioned, maybe even a year. Eventually, that could also mean the elimination of some 60,000 jobs in New Mexico alone.
You also obviously have huge potential impact for the state from a budgetary perspective, and it has the potential to cost the state, to put at risk about $1 billion of revenue that the state receives each year from the oil and gas industry and oil and gas development on federal lands.
The president has nominated New Mexico Congresswoman Deb Haaland to be Interior Secretary. Her nomination not yet confirmed by the Senate, but you can bet that this issue is going to be coming up during those upcoming confirmation hearings. The state's congressional delegation has also been mostly silent about the impact of these new regulations, except for Congresswoman Yvette Harrell. She's been calling on New Mexico lawmakers to push back against any more regulations, especially those that will limit jobs in her state.
We don't want to be reliant on foreign oil, such as oil coming from Russia, where they don't have environmental protections in place. We want to ensure that we're giving our families and our producers, our states, the ability to produce oil, produce jobs, produce revenues, and continue to grow the industry.
Now, we have been trying to reach out to New Mexico's governor multiple times since yesterday, trying to get an idea of how they may respond. But you can imagine, Lou, a lot of these people will be getting an earful from their constituents as more regulations are implemented. And we're still waiting to see what the full impact will be on the industry nationwide. Lou?
Mark, thank you very much. Mark Meredith reporting from Washington. We have seldom seen a president create this much of a stir in his first days in office. Well, the radical left isn't done. Senator Chuck Schumer says President Biden should use his emergency powers on climate change, which means more regulations. Ed Lawrence has that story on what President Biden has planned. Ed?
Yeah, Lou, President Joe Biden adding more and proposing more regulations in the name of climate change in the first 6 days of his presidency than any other in history. Now, it's banning the drilling and fracking, as you just talked about, on federal lands and federal waterways. That has both Republicans and Democrats upset. Listen to this.
This is a president that wants to spend a lot of money. Taking revenue away from the federal government certainly is manifest in stopping drilling on federal lands. Those are federal resources. Those resources generate revenue that will otherwise have to be filled either by borrowing or other tax increases.
Folks, the pipe fitters and others, to get that message out, because what you're talking about here really is jobs, jobs, jobs. And what has happened over the last 20 years, beyond the Trump administration, even as this energy and the shale revolution, shale renaissance has happened, has been of enormous benefit to the United States, enormous benefits to jobs and economic development.
Now, other regulations from the administration target the auto industry in the name of climate change. The Biden administration wants to be net zero by 2050, affecting the future of auto jobs. There are new mandatory workplace safety regulations for COVID-19 that are coming. That adds another layer for medical professionals. And Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testified an additional 10% income tax on companies could be imposed, that make goods overseas and bring them and import them into the United States. And that is on top of raising the corporate tax rate, which the Biden administration wants to do. Back to you, Lou.
Well, not even a week, Ed, and already raising taxes, re-regulating, stopping fracking. This is an administration not afraid of overreach or backlash in extending its initiatives and policies. Ed, thanks so much. Edward Lawrence reporting. And this breaking news, speaking of Biden overreach, a Trump-appointed federal judge in Texas has blocked President Biden from enforcing his 100-day so-called moratorium on deporting illegal immigrants. And on Wall Street, stocks slipping a bit. The Dow down 23 points. The S&P lost 6, both from their record highs. The Nasdaq down 10. Volume on the big board picking up to 5.9 billion shares. A reminder to listen to my reports on the Salem Radio Network each day. Up next, Just the News. John Solomon is going through declassified Obamagate documents, new revelations on the greatest political scandal in our history. John Solomon with me here next. Breaking news now. Newly released declassified documents show several high-ranking members of the Justice Department and FBI tried to get Andrew McCabe to recuse himself from the Russia collusion case. According to notes taken by McCabe, then Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein wanted Rosenstein to step aside for his connections with Democratic politicians, and of course McCabe never did. Also breaking tonight, the FBI knew Cartage Page had no connection to the Russia collusion false narrative days before securing a FISA warrant to spy on the 2016 Trump campaign. Just the News obtaining that newly declassified document in which Page denies connections to sanctioned Russian officials while talking with FBI informant, perhaps more than informant, Stefan Halper. Page also denied any on Page and the Trump campaign. Joining us tonight is the editor-in-chief of Just the News, John Solomon, best-selling author. And John, good to have you with us. This is quite something. You know, we've got proof now of so much vile and outright vicious crime on the part of U.S. government officials and their allies, including little informants and helpers like Stefan Halper. What in the world were they thinking that they could mire themselves in this false, we now know, Clinton narrative, embrace it, and then spread it across their corrupt enterprises that we think of as the FBI and the Department of Justice, or at least we did?
Yeah, no, you nailed it, Lou. That's exactly what went on here. Thanks to President Trump, we have these declassified documents, and they really lay bare. This was the one document of all that the FBI did not want out. Why? Because on October 17th, 2016, 4 days before they got the FISA court to approve a warrant for surveillance on Carter Page, they had their informant, Stefan Halper, rub up against Carter and run an operation against him. And the goal was to get him to admit to the 4 things that Christopher Steele had in his dossier about Carter Page. And they wrote in the control document, if Carter Page knocks this down, we're going to move on, because that's the right thing for the FBI to do. If there's no evidence of criminality, you move on. Well, Carter Page, not knowing that he was talking to an informant, knocks down all 4 of the things. He did not meet with the 2 Russians that Christopher Steele said. They didn't have anything to do with the WikiLeaks dump. He did not have anything to do with the platform at the Republican National Convention. 3 key allegations that went into the FISA warrant that were part of the Christopher Steele dossier. They should have followed their plan. At that point, according to all the professional FBI people I talked to, they should have shut down. Instead, they proceeded with the FISA warrant, knowing that they were misleading the FISA judges. They were keeping exculpatory information from them. This is the clearest evidence of a knowing and willful violation of the law that we've had so far released to the American public.
Hey, John, tell the audience how the FBI actually coached Stefan Halper to support all of the corrupt acts that they were engaged in against the campaign.
It's such an important point, because remember what James Comey said to Chris Wallace back in December 2019, we didn't do spying. I'm sorry, when you read these control documents for Stefan Halper, he was spying. They instructed him how to wear a wire on his body, who to target. They gave him a false cover story. Pretend you're interested in going to work for the Trump campaign, and then use that to target people like Mike Flynn and George Papadopoulos and Carter Page and other senior members of the Trump inner circle. And here are the things we want to know from them. Here's how you get the information. That is spying 101. I asked several former spies and several former FBI executives who used to oversee the counterintelligence division. I said, is this spying, or was James Comey right? And they're like, oh, this is spying. This is what we call spying. James Comey, even last year, was still in denial of what his own bureau was doing to the Trump campaign. When you read these documents, and we're going to put them out over the next few days, the American people will know that Donald Trump told the truth. They were spying, and James Comey lied to us.
You know, John, you and I talked over the past years, but certainly in the last few months before the election, both of us decrying the fact that these documents weren't being released. The administration had in its power the ability to release these documents, but did not. The question will persist. Why not? Because I don't know about you, but I think clearly these documents would have made a huge difference in the minds of many Americans. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome, but it certainly would have changed, I think, a lot of minds and awakened a lot of minds as to what their government was actually doing to persecute this president and his campaign.
My reporting shows that President Trump relentlessly fought with his own bureaucracy to get this done, that Mark Meadows relentlessly, as chief of staff, fought to get this done. And time and again, the career bureaucrats at the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence community kept sticking their foot out, bringing up last-minute legal blocks to do this. This happened even on the 19th, and quite frankly, on the 20th, they were trying to get the documents back already. But they persisted. Right. Donald Trump and Mark Meadows, they persisted, and now we have a much more full accounting of the FBI's misconduct, and it's not a pretty picture.
It's not a pretty picture, and you and I both know, and so does this audience, not a single one of these criminals will be held to account.
Well, I hope you were wrong about that. I hope we're wrong about that. But listen, there's only been one, and a junior lawmaker, a junior law student could have made that case. I do see some evidence that they're circling in on 4 or 5 leaders of the FBI, former leaders of the FBI. Let's see if John Durham can deliver between now and March. I think if it goes beyond March, we might as well pack up and just say we got what we got.
It's starting to feel like we got what we got, and I don't like what we got. John Solomon, it's great to have you with us. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And as John said, those documents will be available on Just the News in the coming days. Up next, Huawei using While President Joe Biden is killing jobs at home, China is exerting its power over our universities. A Huawei employee now claims he was the ghostwriter for a 2019 article supposedly written by MIT's Nicholas Negroponte, in which he defended Huawei against President Trump. Huawei, it turns out, has funded former CIA analyst, former chief of staff at the National Security Council, now president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy. Your reaction, Fred, first of all, it's good to see you, but your reaction to the news that a former DNI's brother is accused of, having money that wasn't reported from China, and also his articles supporting Huawei were ghostwritten by Huawei employees, according to those allegations. Your thoughts?
Lou, it's good to be here. Well, I knew John Negroponte. I can't imagine he had anything to do with his brother being involved in this, but this just shows the global threat that China poses to our security and international security. And my real concern here...
Wait, Fred, excuse me, let me interrupt. I ask you a straightforward question. Isn't this disturbing that we have this at MIT? You're talking about the brother, John and Nicholas Negroponte, brothers, and one of them, the head of DNI, again, CIA is not investigating this apparently. The FBI is not investigating, it's the Education Department. How big a bunch of fools are we going to play to be? This is outrageous.
I think it's very outrageous, and I believe that China has enormous influence in academia, in where sensitive research is being done. And the Trump administration was getting after China on this, and I don't think the Biden administration understands this threat. And what I was going to say, what troubles me is that Biden appointees could not bring themselves to call China an adversary. This is DNI Haynes, the new Secretary of Defense Austin. They said China is a competitor, Lou, not an adversary. Right. No, right. France is a competitor. China is an adversary or an enemy. And if the Biden administration can't call it an adversary, we're in for trouble.
Well, I think we're in for trouble, and I know that you think so as well, because words matter. And the words that are being used here are absolutely, it's scurrilous to see this kind of nonsense. We're talking about over 400,000 Americans dead. We're talking about 25 million Americans infected by the China virus. And we've got people talking about the biggest issue, including the president apparently. The biggest issue is xenophobia, and that it's xenophobic to call the China virus, which originated in China, the China virus. I mean, are we really in that deep an Orwellian pit? Your thoughts?
The Chinese government sees this. They see that the Biden administration wants to deal with it multilaterally through consultations, that they're going to drop the Trump administration's confrontational and what they claim is warlike approach to China. China can't wait. The pressure will be off. Their economy will soar because their cheating international trade will soar. They're all ready to take advantage of what they see as an extremely weak and naive U.S. president.
Is it just geopolitical theater that the Theodore Roosevelt strike force is in the South China Sea, and at the same time the Chinese are launching overflights of dozens of aircraft over Taiwan? Are Xi and Biden just playing on the world stage here to make it look better for Biden?
I don't think Xi is worried about Biden at all. And I think these flights of Chinese Air Force planes over Taiwan is very serious. It sends a message to the world, to Taiwan and to the United States, that China does plan to take over Taiwan, that invasion is coming. And I got to tell you, we cannot show weakness to China right now, because that day could be moved up substantially if that's what Biden is going to communicate.
Well, Biden has already put our troops back into Syria, sent them in straight away, a day after his inauguration. That's serious too. This president seems to be trying to unwind everything that President Trump was doing, including bringing our troops home.
I think that's right. And I mean, a related issue can't get in here is the Iran deal. I think Biden is determined to rejoin this deal, and Iran knows it. It is trying to put preconditions down. So whatever talks we start will be on Iran's terms. And Lou, we will get a deal worse than Obama's deal at this rate.
Well, perhaps we will get lucky. I'll admit our luck looks a little shaky here of late. Fred Fleitz, good to have you with us. Thanks so much. Up next, President Trump may not be in office, but the Trump agenda will play a major role in politics for years. We're joined by former Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, establishing a think tank dedicated to the agenda of Donald J. Trump. He joins us next. And please visit LouDobbsShop.com. Pick up your copy of The Trump Century, a great read about the great president. You can also pick up your official Lou Dobbs Tonight mug. We encourage you to do so. Very chic. That's LouDobbsShop.com. LouDobbsShop.com. We'll be right back. Please stay. President Biden has taken 33 executive actions in his first week in office. 33 executive orders, 23 of them executive orders. That's more than any of his predecessors. 12 of them are aimed at reversing President Trump's America First agenda. But watch what candidate Joe Biden had said just in October about governing through executive orders.
I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
How's he doing on that consensus thing? More executive actions than any president at this point in their term ever, despite what you heard him swear, pledge to the American people he would do, just like fracking. And the list goes on. Our next guest has launched a new think tank, an advocacy group to advance former President Trump's America First agenda and to combat voter fraud and big tech censorship. Joining us tonight is Russ Vought, former director of the Office of Management and Budget and president of the Center for American Restoration Action. Russ, it's good to have you with us, and congratulations on the new organizations. And their purpose is straightforwardly America First, the president's agenda to preserve it. That's a tall, and tough order.
It is. Thanks for having me on, Lou. We want to stand for the proposition that this president stood for, which was that we're America and we have a people that are for God, are for this country, and for community. And we want to make sure we are ending endless wars. We want to make sure that people have an opportunity to participate in social media without their views being censored, that they can trust in fair elections, that they can have immigration enforcement so that we don't have amnesty, and to not have a war on energy like you just mentioned, and this administration is already redeclaring the war on energy. And so these are the types of issues that the president fought for. We're going to continue to fight on behalf of those issues from an America First perspective. This new administration is giving us a ton of proposals that we need to battle back.
I guess a lot of people would say one thing that we are blessed with in this country is a capital city filled with think tanks and donor money gushing toward them to drive the agenda. How is this going to work differently? Because we have had a border that the president succeeded in securing against illegal immigration in large measure because of his relationship with Manuel Lopez Obrador, with his bold statements about and actions against the cartels. This president means to leave that border wide open, means to, as every other nation with any sense is securing its borders because of the China virus pandemic. This president, in his wisdom, has decided to open it wide to refugees, illegal immigrants, and smugglers of all sorts. It doesn't make a lot of sense. What can a think tank do here to help as we're watching a president who has all of the power and every instinct to send an executive order flying on a moment's notice, despite what he said?
It's a great question. This is going to be an action center that's designed to rally the 70 million people across this country that support President Trump's ideas, the America First agenda, and to rally them to be participate in the elective process, to be able to work with their members of Congress, to provide accountability, to use the very tight margins in the House of Representatives and in the United States Senate to be able to push for legislation that puts pressure on the Biden administration. We believe that this is going to be something that is always going to be oriented towards the fight. We intend to be fearless, faithful, and frugal with any resources that we are given to be invested into the fight. And we're not going to take corporate money because we want the fight to be always generated from where the will of the American people is and where the Biden administration is pressing at the lines. And we want to fight there and not based on any kind of agenda that's given by donors.
Well, that's a noble aspiration. At the same time, it's pretty clear corporate America has made a decision. They're not going to give money to anyone who challenged. They're not going to give any money to Republicans, period, I believe. That's where we are. And I believe that somebody's going to have to make a decision about just where corporate America should be in our elections. And I would hope that your think tank would consider whether or not corporate America should be involved in our elections. Who's made this decision, and how much are we going to put up with it? Because the president is a populist, and he may at various points been a reluctant populist, but he is a populist. And to square it up with your fundraising is wonderful. But the fact is, the corporate America, big tech, Wall Street, the chamber, the business roundtable, by the time you get through with the U.S. multinationals, they swamp, and the oligarchs, of course, of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, they swamp every interest in the country. How do you balance that? How do you create a countervailing force against that? Because that's what the American people need.
I think you raise a very important issue. For the long time, the conservative movement has stood for the free market system. And unfortunately, right now, we have big businesses that are aligned, for the most part, with the state. And to the extent that we have that system, we have to come up with new ideas to address that. And the way to do that is to not be indebted to those corporations, the way to have fresh ideas and creative thinking about ways to be able to ensure that we have freedom in this country. It comes from being able to think creatively and to do what President Trump did, which was to get up every single morning, fight for the American people, align with our principles, but figure out what is the moment that this country is facing right now and to come up with policy ideas for the moment.
Well, Russ, we wish you a lot of luck. The country needs exactly what you've articulated. We appreciate it. Russ Vought, thanks so much, and congratulations again. We look forward to talking to you soon. Up next, White House press briefings trying to change history.